Mm-hmm. You all right? You want me to fill in? Or you got it?
Oh, please.
No, that's all right. You look like you got it.
Oh, now it's all right. Okay. You say, what is it? Yeah, we should be okay. Yeah, for some reason it's different. Well, the sun is in a different position midday than it is right now. So, yeah, I think we're okay right now. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu wa sallam ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd, we are continuing our study of the work that is entitled Ad-Durus al-Muhimma li'amat al-Ummah, important lessons for every Muslim, as this work has been authored by the esteemed scholar Sheikh Abdul Aziz ibn Abdullah ibn Baz. May Allah the Exalted bestow expansive mercy upon his soul. And in our lessons, we have completed the first lesson and entered into or toward the tail end of the second lesson in this work. We are at the point where we have entered into Darsu Thani, Arkanul Islam, the second lesson as it discusses the pillars of Islam. So, for review and in order, what are the five pillars of Islam?
Belief in Allah, Shahada.
Good. Shahadatain, the two testimonies of faith.
Salat.
Salat. Zakat.
Ramadan.
Good. Fasting the month of Ramadan. Good, good. And then Hajj. Excellent. And we have discussed the first two. We discussed the Shahadatain, the two testimonies of faith, and we also discussed a Salah, the prayer, and we began entering into a discourse on Zakat, the annual almsgiving. And as it were, we had some homework that you guys thought I forgot because we had a little break, but I didn't forget. And the homework item we were discussing, we were discussing the differences between zakat and sadaqah, the differences between the annual almsgiving and general charity. And we entered into a discussion about who receives zakat. And we mentioned that there are 8 types of people that can receive zakat. And we made the point that for zakat, it has to go to people, individuals. Zakat does not go to institutions or businesses, or it has to go to actual human beings that fit within these 8 categories. Okay, so all that being said, the homework question was and is, who are the 8 types of people who receive zakat?
The elderly.
Okay, you say the elderly, you say the poor.
That would be the elderly.
Okay, we're gonna combine those into one. So the elderly.
Well, I ain't talking about him. You know, this one I ain't agree, right? But in a status all by itself.
Okay, so if we're combining the two, then poor.
You got the non-Muslim.
The non-Muslims.
In need, but live next door to you, your neighbor.
Your neighbor. Okay, good. So the needy. Okay, good. So we have the poor, the needy, and non-Muslims, but a certain type of non-Muslim.
Right.
They're called mu'allaf qulubuhum, those whose hearts are near. So non-Muslims that they are near to embracing the faith, or perhaps we want to encourage them to embrace the faith, we can give them of zakat. That's 3. We got 5 more.
You got your relative, your poor relative.
Go ahead.
It's some other relative. Yeah, but they fall into 2 categories. If they
Okay, you're thinking about the classes of a neighbor and the rights of a neighbor.
I'm talking about if you have a poor relative
Go ahead.
that's in need,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not Muslim,
Mm-hmm.
you can give your zakat to him or her.
Okay. That would be a way of combining 2 or 3 of these categories. Okay, good. We're still at 3. Keep going.
Sick.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we are?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because everything else we've mentioned thus far falls into those three categories: poor, needy, non-Muslims near to embracing the faith. Keep going. Sit down. Sit down. 4. Okay. All right. So you all did 3, so I'll do 3. The workers who work to collect the zakat, right? To work to collect and distribute zakat, they're paid for their services.
That's not called zakat.
Hmm?
That's not zakat.
They're due part of the zakat. Mm-hmm. They're due part of the zakat. They fall into the 8 categories of people who receive from zakat. Okay, 4. I said I would do 3, right? Those who have debts, right? Those who have debts, right? We're talking about Muslims now. They have debts. Zakat can be paid on their behalf to help them with their debts. That's 5. And those who are enslaved, zakat can be utilized to free them from enslavement. Okay, so you all did 3. I did 3. We're at 6. We got 2 more. All right, so if I do one, then you got to do the last one. Okay, so I'll leave you all the easier one. There's another type, we'll call it number 7. This is in all in no particular order. Ibn Sabil, the wayfarer. The wayfarer. And who the wayfarer is, the wayfarer is a traveler, and the traveler is away from home, right? Away from their residence. Now, back home, they may have it all together. They may even be wealthy. But the wayfarer is in a situation where they're stranded, or they don't have access to their funds or their resources, and they need assistance, right? They need assistance. They can be given a zakat. Number 8.
What about the orphan?
Hmm?
Orphan. Did we say the orphan?
Not of the 8 for zakat.
They don't get to zakat?
Not of the 8 for zakat. It's one more. This one, and this one, everybody knows it. At least everybody knows the verbiage of it anyway, for sure. I know you're just raking your brain because it's the last one. The last one is called Fi Sabilillah, in the cause of Allah. In the cause of Allah, right?
Which would be like what? You're doing it for Allah. Like doing it
So, go ahead.
No, the question is specified for
Okay.
me so I can be clear.
Okay, good. So the meaning of Fi Sabilillah, in the cause of Allah, actually means jihad.
Right.
To support the individuals who are engaging in defending the Muslims, right? The military. Okay. So for those individuals, it's for them. However, there are those among scholarship who extend from this. And of course, we're stating this, understanding the times that we're living in today. Offensive jihad does not truly exist because the conditions for it do not exist. In the forefront of the conditions of offensive jihad is having a caliph, a khalifa, that we haven't had since 1924 with Abdul Majid II, right? With the end of the Ottoman Empire. But defensive does remain, right? Defensive does remain. Now, there are those among scholarship who extend from this in the cause of Allah in jihad, because there are others that are considered to be in jihad, that it's not the fighting of jihad, and they are the people of knowledge, the ulama and talabatul ilm, scholars and disciples of knowledge. They as well can receive of the zakat. Now, our next discussion is how much of one's wealth is given in zakat. 3%, 2.5%. It's 2.5%. Good. 2.5% of what?
Wealth, money they earn.
Good, of your wealth. Okay. 2.5% of one's wealth.
Of your savings that you didn't touch.
Okay, good. Good. Now we're going to get into time. Over what period of time?
Annually?
Of your wealth?
Is it annually?
Zakat is paid annually, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, is it you're earning earnings that you have made that year.
Okay, good. Now, you said $1 million? Oh, you said yearly. I thought you said $1 million. Okay. All right. So, all right, let's drop that into this discussion. Are there those who qualify to pay zakat and those who are not qualified to pay zakat? Good. Good. So we talk about those who receive it. Now we're talking about those that are paying it. What qualifies a person to pay zakat and what disqualifies a person from paying zakat?
Person that accumulates wealth. See, earnings is not a part of what we call wealth. My understanding.
Go ahead.
Okay. So what your accumulation is after all debts
Mm-hmm.
and outstanding debts that you have, or some debts are costly,
Mm-hmm.
but it will be counted and annually counted as paid
Mm-hmm.
on a yearly basis.
Mm-hmm.
Then what is left over there?
Yes.
Is 2.5% of that is called. My understanding.
So you're right. You're right. You're right in what you're saying. Now, you wanted she comes with that. Okay. So the marker for who qualifies and disqualifies is 85 grams of gold minimum that a year has passed on it without it decreasing. Okay. Now, of course, we're not doing direct exchanges in gold at this time. So it becomes the equivalent of 85 grams of gold, which I just happened to check it not too long ago. And we're hovering at about $4,700 is the equivalent of 85 grams of gold in US dollars right now. So this means that a person has a minimum. You can have upward up to ad infinitum, no limit on. There's no maximum. Okay, but entry level, let's call it $4,700. Okay, you have a minimum of $4,700. A year passes on that $4,700. It may go up, but it doesn't go down. 4,700 or more after a year's time, you pay 2.5% on that. Okay. If you drop beneath that $4,700 marker, now you're not of those that have to pay zakat. Okay. All right.
I got a question.
And we just want to keep it surface for the sake of this discussion. Go ahead.
So if you have savings and you saved the whole year, and plus you still have debt,
Yes.
so do you?
You would deduct your debts as well, right? So, yeah, you would deduct from your debts, and it's possible based on now. Now it depends on it depends on the type of debts too, right? It depends on the type of debts too, right? So, but we're going to keep it general. We can speak about particulars off outside of class, right? Um, but depending on the type of debt that it is, right? It's possible that maybe you do have in hand. However, because of your debts and such, and those that you owe, it may disqualify you from, right? So, um, and we'll just say this, and then we'll move on. There's a difference between debt that is being serviced and debt that is not being serviced. Okay. So if you have debt and that debt is regularly being serviced and you're on time with that debt that you're servicing, that may not count. Okay. But let's say now you have an individual and it is a clear sum that you owe that sum, that may be right. That may be not be deducted. Okay. All right. So
One more question.
go ahead.
So when do you actually give your zakat? What time of the year?
Okay. Oh, that's an excellent question, and it's on our level 2 here. Okay, good. So when does a person pay zakat? When do you, as an individual, pay zakat? Good question. Uh, nope. That's what the Muslims do.
After
It-
Hajj?
Nope. Some Muslims do that too.
When?
And you can do this and you can do that. So the answer is there is no specific time stated in the Sharia of the year that you have to pay zakat in a particular month or on a particular date, right? Because you're doing well. How can that be measured? Because it's measured based on when a year passes from when you had the money. right? When you have the money, and when you have the money, when it starts may be different, possible, right? So there's no particular time per se, but there are scenarios that do occur. Now, for example, if we're living under an Islamic government, now it is the broader responsibility of the government to make sure these things are taking place. So as as a function of policy, they may put a policy into place for organization's sake and say we're going to do it at this time of the year, so we can structure it all right as policy, and they have the right and authority to do so. Okay. Now there are others that want to seek to combine the virtue of zakat and increase the blessing of their zakat. So now because of that, they will seek to do it during times of year, a time of the year where there's more blessing occurring, like during the month of Ramadan. You're combining your paying of zakat with the blessing of the month of Ramadan. Or some may wait till the last 10 nights of Ramadan. Others may wait till the first 10 days of the Hijjah, right? The days of Hajj, for the added virtue, right? But that's not a time frame that's specifically stated in the Sharia. Does that make sense? Now, being more particular to our circumstance, so we don't have an Islamic governmental structure, right? It's just us and just how we manage ourselves. And at this late date, the most that we have is the masjids. We have the masjids, and we may have some organizations, right? We may have some a body of scholarship in America that has organized themselves. There may be a zakat organization that has organized itself, but even with these three types of institutions, even they themselves haven't organized themselves to the level that they're going to say, "Oh, we're going to collect zakat from the people on this date, and then we're going to distribute it on their behalf." Nobody's doing that, right? No, generally speaking, nobody has done that, other than these zakat organizations and maybe some individual masajid here, but not as a broader collective where it's something that's just known throughout the United States that this is what Muslims do. We're not organized to that level yet. Okay. So there's no particular time frame even for us in the stage of our development, and we are developing. Okay. Go ahead.
Forgive my ignorance, but where is there an Islamic government uh, that exists now, like on the planet Earth? Give me a couple of examples.
The Salam's gonna answer that question before he exits.
Funny, Salam. That ain't funny. Go ahead.
I'm just laughing because
I know.
Oh, Halim gonna answer. Halim trying to duck out. Halim gonna answer.
Islamic
You got that?
only exists in Islamic countries.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Name
So-
one that's really going under the Sharia.
Okay, so here's the point. So this is what we do have. Okay, what we do have. You guys off the hook. You know you're gonna take yourself off the hook anyway. So,
Yeah.
all right. So what we do have, we have Muslim majority countries that that are more inclined to the Sharia. That's what we have today. Okay.
More inclined, meaning they wavering a little bit.
No, it's not that simple. It's really not that simple because we're functioning in the absence of a Khalifa for the past 100 years. And we have nation states, which for the first time in the history of humanity has existed in the way that it exists now. This is a new thing, right? So most of the countries that we call Muslim countries have not been Muslim countries for more than 100 years, right? And many of them are around the 70-year marker right now, okay? And they weren't put into place on their own by themselves, the majority of them. They were put in place by those who won in World War One and World War Two, which were Western non-Muslim countries. Okay. So because of that, we have Muslim majority countries, okay, that are more inclined to the Sharia, and we'll say to the extent that they're able to, right? And there's some room in that and what they're able to, and what they're not able to, right? Could some of them do more? Maybe, but looking at it from the standpoint where they are, many of these countries and their governmental bodies, their hands are tied in many different areas, right? Their hands are tied in many different areas. To make it simple, right? Because again, they weren't the ones that established those countries on their own. So many of those countries are tied in to other countries, and many of those countries are not world superpowers today, right? We see where we're going
Yeah.
without me having to
Yeah.
say, okay, good. Moving forward, fasting the month of Ramadan. Fasting the month of Ramadan. Um, what do we know about fasting the month of Ramadan? What can we say about that? So Ramadan comes as which numbered month on the Islamic calendar? The ninth month. Good. The word Ramadan means what?
The burning.
The burning. Good. Good. It means, right. It means a burning or to be heated because, as it is said, during the time that the months were named, this happened to be a hotter time of the year. So that month was given this particular name. However, what is the wisdom behind the month of Ramadan or fasting the month of Ramadan being called this with this meaning of burning and us fasting during this month? How do we connect burning to fasting? During the month that we are fasting Ramadan, what is it that's burning? Because it may not necessarily be a hot time of the year. In fact, we're on that 30-year cycle where we're getting closer to the winter months now. We're pushing toward it, right? We're not there yet, but we're getting there. Go ahead. Burning of sins. That's right. So the month of Ramadan is a month in which sins, right, are burned and purged. Okay, excellent. Um, and how long is the month of Ramadan? 30 days? 29 or 30, based on deciding of? Okay, which moon? You talking about a waxing moon, a mezzaluna, a waning moon? What are we talking about? Different types of moons?
Outside.
The moon outside. Good. Okay, so we're looking for the crescent moon that we call the hilal, right? Hilal with a ha that comes toward the end of the alphabet. Good. How many people do we need as a minimum? Credible, right? Credible Muslims, informed Muslims to cite the crescent moon on the entrance of Ramadan. One. Good. What about on the exit of Ramadan, meaning the month of Shawwal? One. Two. So all the months throughout the year, the minimum is two credible, meaning they know what they're doing and they're trustworthy and have status in the community and such. Two trustworthy, credible, informed Muslims to cite the crescent moon for every single month of the year, except for Ramadan. In the month of Ramadan specifically, one is allowable, right? Because of the statement of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and him specifying Ramadan. Good.
Why every year we be having problems when they say, oh, well, they cited it over here, but they didn't cite it here, so we got one more day, and they say they fasting today. Why is always that?
Well, because you're thinking it's one moon and everybody looking at the same thing, so we should all have come to the same conclusion. It's one sky.
But there's always something wrong with the oh, they cite
Well,
it,
because
they cite over China, but
well,
they do.
because the way that the Earth is structured and the way that our atmosphere is structured, we're dealing with light, right? And you're dealing with angles at which the light is hitting the atmosphere. The light doesn't hit the atmosphere in the same way because the light is hitting different areas of the atmosphere. Okay. And that filters light different ways. Number one. So because of that, any given month, and you can go to this late day, you can go to a website like moonsighting.com, right? I believe it's moonsighting.com. And it will show you a map of the whole earth, and based on where you're at in the earth, where it is likely to be able to see it and where it's impossible to be able to see it, and where it may be in between where you may see it and you may not, right? Just because you're on the planet Earth doesn't mean that everyone sees the crescent, okay? Number one. Number two, if it's cloudy, if it's obscure, if the sky is not clear, right? Is the whole Earth, the sky clear at nighttime, every single place on the Earth? No. There's some people that are going to have cloudy skies and they just can't see it. And other people will have clear skies and they may have a possibility of seeing it. Okay. And really, really, if we're talking about sighting the crescent moon, right? Then the actual crescent moon, when most people see the crescent moon, they're not seeing the crescent moon that the month entered with. Okay. So just like you have sunrise and sunset, right? You have moonrise and moonset for the crescent moon. So the first, when you have the actual crescent moon, when the month is starting, you're looking at the sky. You're looking after Maghrib, between Maghrib and Isha. Okay, you look between Maghrib and Isha. Okay, and when you're looking at the sky to see the crescent, depending on where you're at on Earth, most places in the Earth though, it looks like a very small slither, and it's very difficult to see with the naked eye at times. And it goes away by Isha and then may or may not come back later. But on the second day of the month, you're going to see it clear, right? And it's going to be very, very, very distinct. Okay, that's the sighting, and everybody may not be able to see it, and that's okay, because from our standpoint, we're just meant to, in our different areas, to start or not start the month based on what we see of it, not based on what is actually there, based on what we see, right? And in order to fast the month of Ramadan, we don't all necessarily have to see the same thing, right? What has confused the matter is globalization. The world has gotten a lot smaller now. Communication has gotten a lot faster, right? So we're communicating this through. We want all the Muslims in the whole world to be able to do the same thing together. And historically, there are two views among scholarship on this issue, and it's what we call the global sighting or the local sighting, right? And we've heard this. But now the global sighting, for those who take that view, that means one credible Muslim in the entire world has seen it, and then it's enough for all the rest of the Muslims. And that can make sense. If we look at what the Muslims were doing historically, though, they didn't have access to the whole globe to say the whole globe is going to do one thing. So historically, the Muslims were functioning locally, but what we call local here means regional, national. It doesn't mean like your individual masjid or your individual town, right? We're talking about entire provinces. Okay, so minimally for us in the U.S., if we are able to build ourselves to that level of organization, it would mean at least those that are in the same time zone, right? That would be local, if not finding a way to expand it out nationally. But we have, what do we have? 4 time zones in the U.S., is it? 4 time zones in the U.S., right? So it'd be very difficult in the U.S. for us to attempt to save the entire country of the U.S. because of the different time zones we have here, right? And this challenge does come up because, for example, and this is an annual thing, where those that are attempting to do the local sighting and they're looking for people that have sighted the crescent moon in our country, right? Or in North America, right? We're extending it beyond our country, North America. They will wait throughout all the time zones to see if someone that saw the crescent moon all the way until we get to Pacific time. There are some people that do that. That's a little burdensome, because really by the time they have done their Maghrib, and they have kind of convened over it and made decisions over it, by the time it may be 1 o'clock in the morning over here, Now we're going to decide whether we're going to fast or not in a 4-hour window. That's not really conducive, right? So minimally, if we get ourselves to that level of organization by time zone, and Allah knows best. Now let's move on. Of course, the month of Ramadan, it has its blessing, it has its virtue. It is the month that the Quran that it was revealed in. Also, there are other prophetic traditions that would indicate that the other heavenly inspired books as well were revealed during the month of Ramadan as well. And within this month, there's virtue. We have the last or the last 10 nights of Ramadan, which has its virtue and increased blessing and effort because we're seeking out Laylatul Qadr, the night of power, as it commonly is stated, or the night of measure, the night of decree. And that is interesting. We're saying this just for information. Is when we say, most people say Laylatul Qadr falls when?
Last 10 days.
The last 10 days. When in the last 10?
27.
The 27th. Most of Muslims were going to say the 27th. Okay. It's not solid that way. It's not solid that way. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, may Allah bestow mercy upon his soul, he mentions in Fath al-Bari, his explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari, there are over 40 different views among scholarship of when exactly Laylatul Qadr can be in the month of Ramadan.
But it's most of the time, is it one of the odd days? That's what they kind of distinguish.
Okay, good. So there's a range here from those that will say specifically the 27th,
Right.
all the way to those that will say it can potentially be any day throughout the entire month of Ramadan.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
Never heard that.
But what we're dealing with is probability, because it's knowledge of the unseen. Okay, where of all of the month of Ramadan, it is more likely for it to be in the last 10.
Right.
Of the last 10, it is more likely to be on an odd night. And of the odd nights, it is more likely for it to be the 27th. But it can be any of them. Some scholars hold that view. And then others say within the 10, right? Within the 10, only with the odd and even. Okay. All right. So that's the month of Ramadan. And of course, we are increasing our spiritual worship throughout the month. So we're fasting during the day, we are praying at night, and we are engaging with the Quran in charity and good character, morality, more so on both sides of the day, the night and the day. We're looking to raise our piety throughout the month of Ramadan, right? كتب يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed for you all, just as it has been prescribed for those who come before you all, so that you all can attain taqwa, so that you all can attain piety. You have the promise of becoming more pious if you practice the verse and fast properly, and or do the equivalent of fasting. Because are there those throughout the month of Ramadan that do not have the ability to fast? Yes. What do those people do?
They feed someone.
They feed someone. So, okay, what are we calling not having the ability? What?
They have an illness.
And so, okay, so anybody that has an illness doesn't fast and feeds people. Not necessarily.
Right. It depends
Not
on
necessarily.
the illness.
It depends on the illness. Good. So keep coming.
What you want me to label one?
Yes. What type of illness are we talking?
Diabetic. The average diabetic cannot fast.
Okay, the average diabetic cannot fast, so this person would do what?
Feed a poor person every day.
Good. So we're speaking about chronic illness and non-chronic illness. Okay, chronic illness in our law means an illness that one is not expected to recover from. Right? Maybe the person will recover, but one is not expecting to recover from it. Diabetes, cancer, right? Do we have cases where diabetes gets reversed? Yes. Do we have cases where people overcome cancer? Yes, but it's not expected. Okay, so if it is a chronic illness that hinders one's ability to fast, okay, a chronic illness that hinders one's ability to fast, then this person can feed for every one day the person doesn't fast. Good. If a person has an illness and it is a non-chronic illness, meaning it's an illness, but one is expected to recover from it, right? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But when it's expected to recover from it, what does this person do?
You gotta make it up.
You have to make up.
Show
Good.
off.
Good. You have to make it up. Good. Now, okay, since you mentioned Shawal, how much time does this person, chronic illness, person had the flu, person we can say now, person had COVID, right? Okay, you're down for a week or so, something like that. Okay, good. You got 7 days to make up. How long do you have to make those days up to fast those days?
Before the next Ramadan.
Before the next Ramadan. That's correct. Okay, good. Now we're gonna do this, reverse engineer this, right? If you get to the next Ramadan and you still have not made up all of your 7 days yet, now what?
You committed a sin.
True. What do you do now? That's true. What do you do now? True. You have to make Toba. Good.
Put some money in that gray box. Right?
Put some money in the gray box. Okay, good. Now, if we get beyond a year and the person still hasn't made up those days for a non-chronic illness, the person still has to fast those days, and they have to.
I know
Go,
the answer.
go ahead.
I know that.
Good.
3 times 20, 60 days.
Oh, that's a different one. That's a different. Okay. So beyond a year now, you still have to fast those days, whatever the days are. In our discussion, 7, and you have to feed a person for every 1 day. So you're fasting those days and feeding a person for however many days it is that you didn't fast because you had a non-chronic illness that got in the way of your ability to fast. Okay. You have to do both. You have to do both. Now, if a person has intercourse during the daylight hours of Ramadan,
60 days.
okay, 60 days fasting, that's correct. That's what Sheikh Hamza is talking about. There are three tiers here. That's actually the second tier. There's something we're meant to do before we get to the second tier. And then if we can't do what Sheikh Hamza is saying, then there's a third tier. What's the first thing we're meant to do? Okay, you make Toba, go ahead. But there's actual prescribed expiation, go ahead.
Feed 60 people.
That's the third one. If you can't fast for 60 days consecutively. The first one is, and we don't think about it often because of how the world is structured today, freeing a slave. Freeing a slave is the first thing we're supposed to do, which gets interesting because there are those among scholarship who actually disqualified in their fatwa, in their edicts, disqualified kings and governing bodies and the ultra wealthy from being able to free a slave. Because what started happening, because when you as the Muslims progressed, those in the upper class were exceedingly wealthy, right? So if they had intercourse during the daylight hours of Ramadan, all right, just free a slave and they just keep going on about their business. I said, I got 30 slaves. Okay. Right? So now the act of piety has been removed from the act. So there are those among scholarship that would say for those people in particular, oh, no. You can't just, it's too easy for you to be able to free a slave. No. That doesn't mean you. You have to fast for 60 consecutive days, right? Because now you're gonna feel the weight of the wrongdoing, right? There are those among scholarship that have this discussion, but okay. The point is though that step one, if a person has done this, you look to free a slave if one has the ability to do so. Okay. And this also brings an interesting discussion today because we say that we have abolished slavery. We say that, but there are still forms of slavery that still is human trafficking. Human trafficking is a form of slavery, for example, right? So that gets interesting. Now, can we insert these areas for freeing a slave or not? It's a discussion. But if we don't have the ability to do this, then one would fast for 60 consecutive days. I mean, you have to fast 60 days straight without stopping for every 1 day that the person had intercourse during the daylight hours of Ramadan. Meaning that in the month of Ramadan, if a person did that twice, that's 120 days straight.
And you got free person, right?
No, not for this one. Not for this one. Okay. Now, if a person doesn't have the ability to fast 60 days straight, right? Consecutively. Then we go to feeding 60 people. Okay, good. So, but the goal of all this spiritual exercise is to raise our level of faith, raise our level of piety, raise our level of practice, right? This is what the month of Ramadan, in the spirit of Ramadan, is about. So even when we get into certain no-nos like we're talking about, certain expiations, even those expiations are something that is still is meant to raise our faith and our faith practice. It's not meant to be just like a punishment. It's meant to actually help you in the end, sir.
No, I was. Suppose you don't have the ability to feed 60 people.
That happened. That happened with one of the companions.
Right.
And the messenger of Allah sallallahu was going through. Yeah, can you do this? Can you do that? Nah, I can't do this. Nah, I can't do that. Do you have this? Do you have that? Nah. So, all right, what do you have? He said, well, I got this pail of dates. Okay, go give that out then. All right, go give that out. Right, you got to do something. Right, you got to do. So, okay, good. So this is fasting in the month of Ramadan. What does fasting mean? How will we define fasting in Islam? You know, I say this because I remember growing up as a kid. I had a cousin that was very involved in the Pentecostal church, and we spent a little time together, sleep over my house. And he came over my house one night, and the weekend with kids, and we got some snacks on a late night, gonna put stuff in the microwave. He said, "No, no, no, I'm fasting. I'm fasting from the microwave." So I can't use the microwave because I'm fasting from the microwave. Can we define fasting like that?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to say was it's deeper than just abstaining from food and drink.
It's deeper than abstaining from food and drink.
That's just it. We abstain just from food and drink, and everything else is, permissible.
But we fast for ourselves because Allah don't need our fast.
That's correct.
Yeah.
All acts of worship are to benefit us. They don't benefit Allah.
Right.
Okay, good. So fasting, it is abstinence. It is to abstain. That part is true, but it goes further. It is to abstain from those things that break the fast. To abstain from those things that break the fast. With their list of different things, we don't have to go through the entire list right now. Okay, from the onset of true Fajr, when Fajr actually enters, until the setting of the sun, along with the intention. That's how we define fasting. Okay. So what are things that can break the fast? Okay. Food, drink, intercourse, purposefully making oneself vomit, for example. Now, if you're saying gossip and bad character and backbiting and slander and tail carrying, lying, these are things that decrease the reward of the fast, but they do not break the fast. They do not break the fast. Okay. Profanity, right? These things decrease the blessing and reward of your fast. You're chipping away at the value of your fast for that day, but your fast is still valid though. Okay. All these things will decrease, right? Decrease the value of that fast and the reward and blessing of the fast, but doesn't break the fast. Okay. All right. Moving forward.
I got one question.
Sir.
Well, explain how Allah changed up Shaitan during Ramadan.
Okay. So we know from the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the shayateen are chained away during the month of Ramadan. Definitive true statement. The shayateen are chained, right? If you want to use the term loosely, they're jailed, they're chained. But chained away from who becomes a question. Good. So chained away from the people of Iman, chained away from the people of faith. Okay. And faith is not all one thing. Faith fluctuates. There are those who have greater faith and lesser faith. So then the stronger one's faith, the more the shayateen are chained away from them. The weaker one's faith, the less the shayateen, the devils may be chained away from them. And a person that doesn't have faith, right, our qualification of faith, such as non-Muslims, for example, then they may not be chained away from them at all. Okay, so it's not necessarily the case that because what we say, and this is a possibility, and there are those that discuss it this way in scholarship, the way that we broadly understand it. All the shayateen are chained away for the time of Ramadan. So anything that you do during the month of Ramadan that you shouldn't be doing, that's really you, because the shayateen, you can't blame the devils now, right? That's an understanding. That's an understanding. Okay, that's one understanding of my scholarship. A second understanding is what we just presented to you, that it is based on the level of iman of the individual that determines how much they are chained away or not from any given individual. Okay, there are others that have another view among scholarship, like Ibn al-Qayyim, may Allah bestow mercy upon his soul, that he mentions that yes, the shayateen are chained away. Ibn Taymiyyah has a similar view, rahimahullah. Yes, they're chained away, but they're being chained up doesn't prevent them from whispering, right? Which is another view among scholarship. But definitively, what we can say for sure is that the gates of Jannah are opened in the month of Ramadan, and the gates of hell, of Jahannam, they're closed during the month of Ramadan. Okay. Moving forward, we want to discuss Hajj. What can we say about Hajj? Hajj is pilgrimage. Go ahead. There is a major pilgrimage and there's a minor pilgrimage. Our term for the major pilgrimage is Hajj. Our term for the minor pilgrimage is Umrah. And we know that Hajj is obligatory upon the Muslim who qualifies. How many times? Once in a lifetime for those who qualify, right? There are those among scholarship that have a discussion concerning Umrah. Is Umrah an obligation or not? Not is it a pillar, but is it an obligation upon the Muslim or not? There are those among scholarship that say no. Some say it is.
Especially if you're not able to make Hajj.
Okay, good. Now, let's talk about ability. What does it mean that one has the ability to make Hajj? Because it's the ability that makes it obligatory upon you once in a lifetime. If you don't have the ability, it's not obligatory upon you once in a lifetime. So what's ability? Your physical condition and your wealth. True. Keep going. Physical condition, wealth, having a path to get there, right? Maybe you have the physicality for it, maybe you have the money for it, but you don't have a way to get there, right? A way to get there, because even, get on the plane. Well, even with that, we can say times of old, the type of because people would travel for long periods of time to get there, right? And you have highway robbers, and that will wait on the Hajj routes, and you have to go in a caravan, and do you have the proper way to get there? In our time, we don't necessarily have those type of things, but we have visa issues, right? You can have it's possible that you can have the physical health and the money to go, but maybe you don't get a visa to go. Or now with this past year, the country has started this what they call a lottery system. Maybe you don't get selected, right? So do you have a way to get there, right? And if you don't have a way to get there, then it's not obligatory upon you. Now, for women, there's something else that is added for them in their ability to go. They have the first three too, but they have another one as well.
Oh, they just lifted that. But if you're talking about they cannot go without a proper escort, they just lifted that a couple weeks ago. They're saying that's not obligatory no more.
Who was they? Because we talking about Islam.
Saudi Arabia.
From a governmental standpoint, we talking about Islam now. A government can change its laws to whatever it wants. We're talking about Sharia. The same thing you say don't exist in other countries, right? We talking about Sharia. So for a woman, and your point, right? To your point, for a woman, she also is in need of a mahram, right? A guardian, or as you say, an escort, who will be a male related to her, from her father upwards, right? Grandfather, great grandfather, right? And then going across throughout her brothers. I'm sorry, not her brothers first. Her father upward, and then her uncles going across from the father, and then outward from her brothers. right?
and sons.
And potentially sons. Not always sons. Depends on
The age.
not just age. Do they have the degree of responsibility and maturity to look out for a woman in that type of a way, right? And because what some of the women do, and they do this with marriages, they say my son is my wali, but he's your son. So they put the young son in, and he just does whatever the mother says. That's not the job. It's not the job to listen to mommy on this one. Just like that, that ain't it, right? You have to look out for her best interests, be able to, and we're talking about Hajj, protect her and such, right? These type of things. So potentially it could be a son, right? It could be a son. Now, there is a view among scholarship, which again, which you're indicating here, and this is something that exists in the Shafi'i madhab, in the Shafi'i approach to law, because when we look at a ruling on something, right, that something is in this case obligatory, it's a must-have. Scholarship also looks at not just the ruling, but what's the reason for the ruling in the text, right? What's the justification for this ruling inside of the text? Okay. So why, and we mentioned this, we just mentioned it, but why would a woman need a mahram on her travel?
So she could be protected.
So she can be protected. So we're speaking about her security and her safety, right? Okay, good. So that's the reason for the ruling. What if we can guarantee, as much as we're able to, her safety? Does she still need one then? So because of this,
Funny you would mention that, because last time I made Umrah, we had a sister that was there, and she didn't have the guardian, and she came from another state, but they felt that because she was with our group,
correct.
we was
That's this view among scholarship, right? Is she is with a group that is, and she stays with their group, and she's safe and secure. There are those among scholarship that it would allow that. Not all, but there are those among scholarship that will allow it because it fulfills the reason for the ruling. There are also those that would mention if there are a collective of women that are going as a group, then this could possibly be allowable as well. And this is more than likely, from a Sharia standpoint, what has caused that particular country to become a little more loose with its laws and policies. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Where is Hajj performed? And when does Hajj happen?
Zulhijjah, the month.
The month of Dhul Hijjah, and Hijjah is another name for Hajj, so it's the month of Hajj. Good. In Mecca. Good. Within the first 10 days. Right?
Also in two other cities.
Go ahead.
Arafat, what's that,
Muzdalifah. Right. In Mina. Yeah. In Mina, right? Okay, good. Good. So if we want to include that in Mecca, or say this, the outskirts of Mecca, these are areas that have functions that we perform in Hajj as well. Correct. So we're saying during the month of so we'll say the place, Mecca and its outskirts, during the first 10 days of the Hijjah, and we can specify that further and say between the 8th and the 13th, right? And depending on how we're making Hajj, we may be able to get that down between the 8th and the 10th, right? Potentially. But let's just say between the 8th and the 13th, right? In that range. Let's ask a question. We can close with this. Can you make Hajj on behalf of someone else?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Anyone you want in any situation?
You have to be a Muslim and a Muslim.
Okay, have to be Muslim. That's correct.
Well, you can make Umrah on your deceased brother.
Good. Make Umrah on your deceased brother. Good.
Or sister.
Or sister. Good. Now, what is it that's making that a thing?
Biological, or just brother, or a Muslim brother or sister, or it's got to be your biological brother or sister?
No, any brother or sister.
Muslim.
Right, Muslim. Definitely Muslim.
Right. I'm sorry. Yeah, but I just.
Okay, good. So if a person has gotten into their elder years, or they have an illness, some type of chronic illness, we just know they're not going to be able to do it, or a person has passed away, they won't be able to fulfill the rites of Hajj. Okay, and we can kind of see this. Definitely, the person's passed away. Then one can make Hajj on behalf of that person. Okay, with the caveat though. There's a caveat there. Okay, and the caveat that not all, but the majority of scholarship will mention is that so long as you have done it for yourself first to fulfill your own obligation, then you can on behalf of someone else, Hajj and Umrah. Okay. This is also similar for fasting the month of Ramadan for a person who has passed away and they still have days obligatory upon them to fast. Okay. Where they owe some days and they passed away that way, then you can fast on that person's behalf. Right? Not they just passed away and you just fast Ramadan on their behalf because the pen is right lifted from them at the point that you passed away. But if the person passed away and they still had days, obligatory days to fast, right? Whether it's because of Ramadan or a vow that they've taken or some expiation or something or another, right? Then someone else can do so on their behalf, and the person that has the most right to do so is their next of kin. On who? If you passed away, you passed away. So good. So now, when a person does a good deed on behalf of another, that person does receive those good deeds, right? The person does receive those good deeds on their slate. Okay, good. So once the person has passed away, right, as far as further obligations upon them, there's nothing further for them to do. But what has occurred in their life, they're still accountable for. Okay. And for this reason, a person can do good deeds on their behalf and the person receives it. For this reason, if a person has done a good deed that continues after them, right, establishing a masjid, right, some religious recording, some form of charity, whatever it is, the person will still receive the blessings for those good deeds. Likewise, if a person has done a bad deed in perpetuity, right, you've done something bad and that bad thing continues after you, it's also possible for you to continue to receive those bad deeds as well, right? Okay, all right. So, yes.
If you want to fast for a person who didn't finish Ramadan,
Yes,
you can't do that in the month of Ramadan. You have to do that beyond Ramadan.
that's correct. That's
You
correct.
have to fast the month
Because
of
you have to
Ramadan
fast your own month of Ramadan. That's correct.
Oh,
Absolutely.
You emphasize that.
That's correct. What Sheikh Hamza is saying is correct. Right. So, right, you have to do your own Ramadan. So you will be making up those days and other days throughout the year. That's correct. That's correct. Okay. So,
But as far as Hajj,
go ahead.
you already made Hajj years ago.
Yes.
So you want to make Hajj for another person.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make intentions to make Hajj for another person.
Yes.
During Hajj.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And when you do a good deed on behalf of another, this way that we're describing, that person gets the reward for it, and you get the reward for it too, based on your intention. All right, based on your intention. So we believe that this covers an overview level discussion concerning the pillars of Islam. Inshallah ta'ala, in the next sitting, we will enter into Adars al-Thalith, Arkan al-Iman, the third lesson, the pillars of Iman. Hadha wallahu a'lam, sallallahu ala Muhammad. Sheikh.
Got one question.
Oh, he was first.
Oh, you first.
Okay, thanks.
Good, go ahead.
And one thing about if you in Mecca right now, if you want to make Umrah for another person, you have to leave Mecca and go to another mosque. Guys, we got to go to Towson to a mosque there, take a shower, make intentions. What's that? Do salat, kafir room, and ikhlas, and then come back to Mecca in the cab, Labbayk Allahola Labbayk. Okay, you can't do Umrah. If you're in Mecca and you want to do Umrah for another person, you just can't do it. You have to leave Mecca and come back. That's very important, right?
Yes. Yes, and you're talking about the miqat, right? The miqat, and yeah, we don't want to get too far into the weeds, but there's a discussion concerning what is mentioned in the discussion. You're right. You're right in what you're saying. There's a discussion on how this is to go in these scenarios. If a person is entering into Mecca and you're crossing one of the mawaqit, the miqat, the places where you make your intentions from, right? And meaning the time you're at a particular place, but at that place is the time to make your intention for to come into a state of ihram, right? Then you have to go through those miqats that are in those directions, right? If you're beyond the miqat, right? If you're beyond the miqat, um, like for example is the case for a lot of us when we're coming in through airplane through Jeddah and just going straight in, then it's from your location, right? It's from your locale where you are. Okay. If you are a resident inside of Mecca, then you enter into a state of ihram from where you are, right? But now if you're traveling from outside of Mecca, you're non-resident and you want to make umrah, um, uh, after you've already made it, right? Then you do have to exit and then, right, and then come back in again, right? And then come back in. But there's also a discussion on scholarship where many of scholarship today, because of text, we're at the end of we're at the end of time, who would discourage multiple umrahs on one trip. It's not haram, it's not unlawful, it's not sinful. But because of the way that the text is structured, there are those that would discourage that, right? And to make one umrah per trip that you're going, right? But if a person decided to do so, the person's not necessarily sinful. Your question?
Uh, you can make umrah without making hajj.
Yes, you can make umrah without hajj.
Without making umrah.
You can make you can make hajj without making umrah as well. Possible. And you can make hajj and umrah together. Possible. All scenarios are possible. And this is another reason why it becomes important to make your intention when you enter into a state of ihram, because that is where you make that intent, right, on what exactly you're doing when you're going into the sacred land. Um,
One more question. This
Please.
is a different subject.
Please.
Why did Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam change the name of Medina and Mecca? Why he changed these names?
Well, I don't know that he changed the name of Mecca, but Medina was Yathrib. Medina was Yathrib. Um, and goodness, it's not my active memory. So
What year was it?
um, the reason for the change of the name had a lot to do with the meaning of the word Yathrib, right? Which scholars differ on what it actually means. The meaning of the word Yathrib and its potential ties to those of Jewish faith being the ones to have named the city when Islam and the prophets have more right to name the city and name it something that is honorable and name it something that is honorable, right? Um, the name change um, definitively as a particular year or event. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Because this Yathrib is still in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and I think if the Jews read it, they should know that that city is now Medina,
Correct.
and the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came.
Mm-hmm. Well, they knew this. They knew this, right? So, right.
They should know it even today if they read that, if
Mhm.
they put the dots together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The dots are there. Even for a person that, even with the Bible, with what is left of it, that's there. We'll say it that way. What is left of it, that's there. If a person really read it through for what is there and understood what is there, you're still being pointed to Islam. You're still going to get pointed to Islam because if you're believing all the prophets, you're still going to get pointed to the prophet and to another prophet coming after Isa because it's there, right? But now, for those of today, for Jews and Christians, now the Jews of that day because they understood that in their books, because they weren't Arabs, they weren't from there, right? They traveled there from the Levantine region some generations before the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, awaiting the final prophet and messenger. That's why they ended up in Yathrib, because of what you're saying. It's in their book. But because in the world that they knew, the prophets were always from the lineage of the children of Israel, from Ishaq to Ibrahim, right? Even though, of course, there are prophets before Ibrahim, alayhi salam, right? But in their minds, every prophet has to come from this lineage. So when they realized that the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was from the line of prophet, yes, but he's from the line of Ismail, not from the line of Ishaq, from the children of Israel, then they rejected. Not because they didn't know he was coming, not because they didn't know for a fact he was a prophet, because he wasn't from their direct, immediate bloodline. They rejected it, right? So do it again next week, inshallah. And I believe we have the time change, right? Daylight saving time is on the 6th, right? Is that Sunday?
This week.
So okay, so let's project.
Saturday night.
It's Saturday night into Sunday. So right now, if Maghrib is at 6:13, let's just call it 6:10. By next week, it'll be at 5:10, which and Asr will be at 3 o'clock, which means we can still do our class at 4 o'clock, right? It will be from 4 o'clock until before Maghrib, right? So we can keep our. It looks like we can keep our 4 o'clock time, right? We can keep our 4 o'clock time without it disrupting our prayers. Okay. Barakallahu feekum. We'll see you all next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Cook you up something, man.